What's going on, everybody? We are back once again with another edition of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. It is one of my very favorite days of the week, Throwback Thursday, August 3rd. Can you believe it? I can't. I don't know. But at the same time, speaking of things you can't believe, 200th episode of AEW Dynamite. Are you kidding me? How has it been 200? I feel like it just started a few weeks ago. It did not. In fact, it's been 200, and it was a fun episode. We're going to get into that and our throwback topic, another fun one, fun-ish, depending on who you are, fun to reminisce about at the very least. Stone Cold Steve Austin and his iconic piledriver botch where he was spiked by the late, great Owen Hart. And then the famous roll-up. We're going to get into that to finish the show. But before we do, let me introduce my panel and co-host for today. First and foremost, all the way from Philly, Mr. Anthony Ricciardi, head of opinions. How are you, my friend?
Doing all right. It's once again to do another throwback and reminisce with Dynamite last night for the 200th episode. So let's get to it.
Absolutely. And next up, from the Virginia, D.C. area, Shad. How are you doing today?
I'm good, brother. I'm good, man. DMV stand up. The topic that we're talking about today definitely is more sombering moment in pro wrestling. A lot of what ifs kind of occur in the health of Stone Cold, but we'll get into that. And then, yeah, man, Dynamite last night. I liked it. We'll talk about it, man. 200 strong. Salute to them.
Absolutely. Let's get right into it, too, from Dynamite last night. Let's talk about the MJF promo. This one was huge. This was the big moment. We've heard Ben Allison, our good buddy, asking all the time for a world title match at Wembley. And that's what we're going to see. I mean, it's official. This promo was fun. I like the way they did it personally, but I really do want to get you guys' thoughts. I'm going to start with you first, Anthony, then toss it to Shad. How did you feel about the segment? Are you stoked about the match? And do you think they picked the right main event for the all-in card at Wembley?
I do think it's the right match. Just considering how they're building it, I found it interesting that MJF was kind of going back to very similar, if not the same promo that he cut when he was feuding with CM Punk, talking about being, bullied as a child to get, that babyface reaction with the crowd. I do find it interesting that, he makes it a point of saying that he's still a scumbag, which Adam Cole signing the contract without reading it leads me to think there's probably something in there, because I do think that this partnership is going to go up in smoke at some point. And I think MJF's going to be the one that pulls the trigger. I'm curious to see where they go with it. Obviously, Roddy feels like he's cast aside, and he's with two of Adam Cole's former buddies that were also cast aside in the Kingdom. Whether or not that plays a role in this, but I think ultimately MJF versus Adam Cole at All In was the smart play.
Definitely hear where you're coming from. And before I forget to mention it, my favorite line from the promo is when MJF went full Kevin McAllister from Home Alone. I'm not afraid anymore. If you didn't make that connection, and it's such a subtle Chicago thing, MJF is that smart. Remember, Kevin, when he's home alone, in Home Alone 1, walks out of the house right after the guys scares him, his neighbor that shovels the salt in the snow, and starts yelling, "I'm not afraid anymore." And then ironically, it's the neighbor that saves Kevin. But that movie's in Chicago also, so it could have been a subtle shot in that direction. I don't know. What did you think about the segment, though, Shad? What were your thoughts?
You have to love our favorite scumbag, MJF. He's not just a scumbag. He's our scumbag, as he said last night. I like it, man. He's playing mind games with the people. He's really leaning into this babyface, character where we know he's not really a babyface in the back of our minds, but we're just loving it and the fans are soaking it all in. I think that the promo that he cut, going back to an old story like Anthony said, and trying to make himself seem more relatable and more, personable, and kind of showing his appreciation and love to this new found friendship that he has with Adam Cole, and just kind of, reeling Adam Cole in and telling him, hey, buddy, I promised you the shot. I'm going to give you the shot. And not only are you going to get the shot, you are going to get it, as Tony Khan says, the biggest wrestling event in the entire century of existence at All In. But I'm liking it because we know what's going to happen, and we know it goes with that contract signing. I mean, it's one of those things, man. You got to read every detailed, as small fine print of what it is, and there's going to be some shenanigans. Maybe it will be a match, but it won't be a title match, or maybe it'll be some sort of like handicap match where, we're expecting this bromance and this tag team to break up at the pay-per-view. But I mean, if we do get it to be a regular match, I was there in attendance for the first one at the Dynamite in DC. One of the greatest matches I've ever seen live. I'm just drawn in. I love the storyline. I think this is the best storyline that they have going on right now. And I think both of them are just knocking it out the park.
I couldn't agree more. They're so entertaining. It was easy out of the gates to go like, oh, this is a short-term deal, right? Like, it doesn't really make sense to pair MJF and Adam Cole. This is one of those things that's organic, and MJF has so many of those on his resume at this point. It blows my mind, right? Like, how many times has MJF taken a situation where you're like, this is where he's going to get exposed. This is where we're going to, he's not going to be able to carry the boats or whatever. Not to quote David Goggins there, but I'm kidding.
No, he's good at it. I mean, we see him do it with Wardlow, with Jericho, and them prior to it too. Like, this is kind of his thing.
Yeah, he can take. I mean, even the presidential campaign stuff was hysterical.
Yeah,
and it should not have been. That should not have been as entertaining or as fondly remembered as it was. And it was. It was good. It was enjoyable. And yeah, sometimes I think MJF gets too much credit, and then others I think back and I'm like, maybe he doesn't get enough. I don't know. I like the idea of even dragging it out further with Cole. Right? Cole got the win. It'll be 1-1 if MJF wins clean and we don't break this up. There is a route you can go where this isn't the All In, isn't the final. And it's still great. I don't know. No matter what, I feel like this storyline is just fun in an unexpected way. Right? What do you guys think? Similar?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like they're both able to tell the story well enough, like how they act upon the gimmick and whatnot, or upon the storyline, where it makes it good. Like, just you're seeing different levels. It's like you're peeling back the onion. You see different like layers of what's going on within the storyline, and it's taking you on a ride. And I would be cool if it does lead to just a regular match and MJF gets some sort of a clean finish, and we keep this friendship going on, and you build it up with what's going on with Roddy and stuff like that. Because I don't know, man. This is they're selling those shirts like hotcakes. I feel like I wouldn't pull the life on it just yet, but it's kind of a wait and see situation.
There really is truly something there, like you said, the shirts just sell. They fly off the shelves. It's obvious. I mean, we saw so many in the crowd last night, right? Like, and I was giggling at. Did you see the amount of times that they showed a crowd shot and somebody was wearing one of those shirts over whatever shirt that they wore into the arena? I counted 3 times throughout the episode where somebody clearly bought the shirt at the event and then just put it on over what they were wearing.
Right.
Like,
it's like when you buy a jersey, you put it over your work
like
shirt and stuff like that.
yeah, and I was like, I mean, just that's hard. That's one of those things that's like difficult to quantify. Anthony, right? Like, given the merch sales, it's one of those things that's hard to keep these guys away from each other, right?
Well, they're going to keep selling the shirts regardless, but they could drag this out if they wanted to do a 6-man and add a third person to MJF and Cole if they wanted to go that route. MJF's former partner, Richard Holiday, is a free agent, so he's certainly a possibility if they wanted to do the Kingdom and Roddy against them. At some point, MJF's probably going to be the one doing the turn. That's my guess. Whether or not they main event both All In and All Out, if they do it a week apart to do the two, that's a possibility.
That would make a lot of sense for sure. And we got a comment here from my dad. MJF is great because he knows everyone is in on the joke. Healer, babyface, people love him. I agree with that. We're all 3 90s kids here. I played Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. He's like a fakey face, right?
He is so much better than everyone else.
Yeah.
And it shows every time he's out there. You could tell. That's why every segment or every feud he's in, it's the most interesting one going into any pay-per-view because it's him.
No doubt. And I totally agree. I think he's levels above almost anyone else in the industry right now as far as just entertainment value. Pure charisma. If that's what we're rating, number one. Easy money on that one too. With that, let's jump into the next segment. We're going to talk about the Swerve and AR Fox. I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, essentially an all-out assault on Nick Wayne and really sending a message to Darby Allin as well. I know me and Shad both really enjoyed the segment, but Anthony, I want to get your thoughts on that one. How did you like the vignette, and where do you think the next steps are as far as building this rivalry?
I love the visual. I thought it was the way they shot it, leaving Nick Wayne busted open, taunting Darby. The only thing I would have done different is I wouldn't have called Darby. I would have FaceTimed them. I think that visually seeing Nick Wayne busted open, I know, granted, the audience saw it, but, technically Darby didn't because I don't believe it was a FaceTime call. I think it was just a real phone call, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So I would have done that. I know it's a little thing, but visually, like if you're answering the phone thinking your buddy's on the phone, somebody that you mentored, and the first image you see is that person all busted open, it's going to freak you out. I think that would have added a little bit to it. I mean, ultimately, this is probably going towards, I would presume, All In at Swerve and AR against Nick Wayne and Darby. Whether or not they add a third person on each side, whether they add Sting, with his injured ribs, if he's well enough, I'm assuming it's going a tag match for All In. It would be my guess.
Yeah, I think that's something that would make a lot of sense. I didn't have an issue with them not doing the FaceTime thing. I feel like, given that it was like basically they ran up on his home training center, the idea of it felt like enough of almost like a stick up.
No, I understand that, but
you know what I mean?
You had him call.
Right.
You could have just made it a FaceTime. That's all I'm saying. It would just add to it. That's all.
For sure. I hear where you're coming from on that. I do think, though, that the idea of him throwing the phone and then the visual of the skateboard through the window was fun too, because I also like the assumption that now Darby's going to have to watch this back and know he couldn't have done anything because he wasn't there. Right? I mean, I totally hear where you're coming from on FaceTime. Would have made a lot of sense, but we've seen so many recent FaceTimes on the other brand.
I get
that's
it.
where I'm also kind of like
visually though, because he was busted
for
open.
sure.
If it was just a beatdown, I'd be like, who cares?
Yeah,
but the visual, I think it adds a little to it.
And when they were using the shard of glass, Shad, I know you loved this one and loved the storyline as a whole. Let's get your thoughts on this one as well.
Swerve Strickland, besides MJF, he's light years ahead of anybody on that roster as a heel. He's a mastermind. I love I love this segment. I love the, home video-esque. He said, cut. I made myself a movie. And he cuts into that. These guys just broke into this child's little dojo that is made by his dad and, just beat him to a bloody pulp, man. Like, AR Fox is benefiting so much aligning with Swerve. I feel this was a guy who's only been known for what he does as an in-ring competitor. You're seeing, him align with Swerve and just the character arc becoming way more of a draw on the weekly television. And I think him and Swerve, having history together in the Indies and now being with each other as a team and being in the Mogul Embassy, it's a match made in heaven for all of it. And I mean, it's just so entertaining, man. Like, salute to Nick Wayne, man. He's gonna benefit off this, but like just going there and breaking him with the glass like portrait of him and his dad and saying this is gonna lie like your dad, whatever he says, some disrespectful stuff like that. I don't necessarily disagree with Anthony on the point. I feel like you could do the FaceTime. It wouldn't make sense. I like the bit of like, oh, you can't even recognize your face to open it. Unlock your phone. I thought that was a cool bit to it. But I mean, you could have done that just so Darby could have visually seen his man's like just laying there in blood. But I mean, overall, it was one of the highlights of the show last night. That segment ruled.
I also really enjoyed the fact that he said our latest movie. The way he said it, like, watch our latest film. Oh, it's so good. The lead in. That was one of my favorite, like, just such a subtle line, but it's so like, because I was like, oh, what is this going to be, like a music video? Like, no, it's just a beat down.
It was a horror film.
Horror film, exactly, right? It was like, I mean, outstanding. And to your point about the character development with AR Fox, like, talk about elevating someone and also Nick Wayne at the same time. His level of experience already for someone that's 18, I mean, I can't wait to see what this kid can do when he's 24. 6-7 years from now, he grows into his body even more too, right? He's a pretty big kid for an 18-year-old. He gets a little bigger and fills out, kind of like Dustin Poirier back in the day, not to make a UFC reference, but right, Poirier came in the kind of thin 145er, and then he's now the bulked up 55er that he is. I kind of picture a similar arc with Nick Wayne, even McIntyre, the way he transformed his body.
I'm a basketball fan. Nick Wayne is the Chet Holmgren of AEW.
Yes, he is.
They look like each other too.
They do. They have. That's a great shout. That's hilarious. Okay, wait. With the Chet Holmgren line, we got to move on to the next segment. That got me too good. We had the Jungle Boy storyline. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. Turning heel, not something I ever expected about him. He's not Jungle Boy anymore. He's Jack Perry now, and I will not say that again on this show. I've done it like 4 weeks in a row. It's Jack Perry, and we had Jack Perry in what I imagine to be the first in the long line of ECW veterans to confront him. Jerry Lynn first, followed by RVD. So I guess we had two, technically, if you think about it. I'm excited to see RVD in AEW. It's awesome. And like he said about retiring belts, that was a fun line to build this match in the promo later. Shad, did you enjoy this one as much as I did? And are you excited to see RVD debut in AEW?
Yeah, I'm a little child, bro. I popped to see RVD. This is a guy who I've been a fan of from like the beginning phases of me watching wrestling, and the work that he did at ECW. I mean, we all talked about One Night Stand on a prior before too. Like RVD is just he's a staple, and we're building off of this FTW belt and like the lineage of ECW. I feel like it's a good nod to it. And I mean, RVD's been wrestling in the indies for the last couple of years, so he's definitely in wrestling shape. So I think it's a good nod to it. I'm curious to see what the end result's gonna be. I know RVD is obviously not gonna be a full timer on AEW. This is probably just a one-time match kind of thing. But I wonder if he's gonna be the one that will win the belt and then they'll just retire it completely and we move off this FTW belt on AEW? Or is this, like you said, going to become a gauntlet thing where Jack Perry is going to be beating all these old ECW guys? He's going to get RVD, then they're going to call Tommy Dreamer, and then he's going to beat him. Bully Ray wrestling still. You're going to get him to probably find, who knows? Sabu was already in there before. I wonder if that will become a storyline and it comes back to maybe, I don't know if Taz can wrestle still, but it'll be cool if Taz the one to get the belt off of him to retire it. But I like it. I mean, I like it more for the nostalgia act. I'm still not sold on Jack Perry. His heel work isn't something that I like a lot. And it's more so just because I just not drawn into his character as a heel. I feel like he doesn't have a lot of personality. He doesn't, come off as like that heel that he's trying to portray to be. He's still very bland, incredible wrestler, but I feel like he needs to, hone into it a little bit more. But I mean, just off the fact that we had RVD last night, I enjoyed the segment.
Can't help but love that. Anthony, you're from Philly and an ECW guy. Did you enjoy seeing a couple ECW originals on AEW last night?
It doesn't surprise me that RVD would be the guy. I mean, out of the ECW guys still going, there aren't too many that can still go. Bully Ray is, RVD is, Dreamer really isn't. He'll do occasional matches here and there, but overall, there's not too many that are still going. RVD is the type that could definitely put Jungle Boy over. I think since turning heel, I do think that revitalized him because, he had a nice little run with, the Four Pillars match, showed a little bit of personality, but I think he's really kind of embraced the heel persona. It's not MJF heel, but there's very few that are that would even come close. But I think a nice little feud, Jungle Boy, RVD, probably likely a one-off would be my guess, unless they double up with RVD and get him for All Out as well the week later. But I don't see him really going through ECW guys because I don't think there's many left. There's really not many left for him to legitimately go through. I assume it's ultimately going to lead back to Hook. That would be my guess.
I totally agree with that. And as the world's #1 Hookamaniac, I cannot wait to see Hookamania run wild on Jack Perry. And also, I wanted to bring up another thing about the Jack Perry heel thing. There's a logical route to go as like he grew up as Luke Perry's kid and he's like the spoiled kid. And while he kind of hints at it in his heel stuff, I want him to lean fully into that. Like, oh, you're Taz's son? That's cute. My dad's Luke Perry. Ever seen 90210? Like, I'd lose my mind. If Jack Perry goes that route on Hook, I would die laughing. Like, that would be outstanding. It's touchy. It's terrible because obviously his father is, rest in peace, Luke Perry's awesome, right? Like, I'm a fan. I'm not saying like abuse that.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's gonna go full heel and it's AEW, we've seen the routes that Christian's gone. MJF has been very personal. Using it from the heel side, like your dad's Taz, like that would be. Could you imagine? Like, right? Like, how many Emmys does Taz have? Like,
I would have almost had him. I know he's already done the Beethoven music, but I almost first time he came out, I would have, because Tony likes to pay for rights. I would have had him come out to the 90210 theme and then cut mid and go to Beethoven just to like, F with the audience.
I would have.
That would be awesome.
That would have been actually outstanding. I was gonna say even like California, like the OC theme. It's not.
Yeah, but that's not tied to.
It isn't, but it just would be. It's just heelish if he did. It would be very like just a cocky move. I mean, I like the Beethoven theme enough, but 90210 song would be hilarious.
I almost think he would have to do it the first time, and it starts and then cuts, and then goes to Beethoven or something. Like it can't because the crowd will start singing along with it or something because it's iconic. So they would have to like cut it just to piss the crowd off.
Definitely. I totally agree with that. Though, let's get into the main event. We've got a title change on our hands at the 200th episode in the main event in a match that there's been a little controversy about, was it cold booked? Was it, was it built? It wasn't. I don't know. Given Hikaru Shida's history as a champion and given Tony Storm's, I thought it deserved the main event of UFC 200. Jeez Louise. Dynamite 200. And I enjoyed it myself. And I enjoyed that Shida with the surprise win. It changes things. It freshens up the women's division. We hollered for booking better. This was well booked. And the match was good. I'm going to start with you, Shad, and then toss it to you, Anthony. Do you agree, or what do you think about this one?
Yesterday on our preview show, I was very adamant and very kind of brash about how I felt about AEW's booking towards the women's division. And I think last night was a half a step in the direction to them to probably, slowly making things better. I like the fact that the women got to go at the main event, especially it being a championship match out of all the matches last night, that they showed the significance and importance of that title. So kudos to them on that. And I feel like it's a good moment because, like I mentioned yesterday, I feel like my favorite AEW Women's Champion reign was Hikaru Shida. I think she was having banger of matches, and it's one of those situations where I feel like AEW was doing so good and they were making stuff work during a time frame where we didn't have, packed arenas, and them being such a young promotion at that time, having her, being the women's champion and having a great reign, having great matches and, fun feuds within it. I feel like and her being historically the longest reigning women's champion, I feel like it's, right for her to get that title on a 200th episode of Dynamite. For all the Dynamite she was champ and all the great that she did, that's how you kind of pay back to someone who's been one of the staples in your, roster in your women's division. And I mean, I'm just hoping that this opens a new door and this turns the page for them to, allow this title to have fresh matchups and just meaningful feuds and matches that can carry on for the weeks, and just booking the women's division better, just in general. So, I mean, like I said, I give it a half a step. I'm not giving a whole step just yet because it still needs more groundwork needs to be made. But I definitely did enjoy the moment of it, and it was a good match.
Definitely. Anthony, what were your thoughts on this one as far as like the end of Tony's title reign too, and like Shida, like Shad mentioned, was one of the best champions we've seen. And I love the half a step in the right direction reference. Do you agree on that one?
I think it's one of those situations where I think Shida winning was a good move to make a memorable moment on a historic episode 200. Sheeta didn't really get her just due prior because she was the champion during the pandemic. So it really was, I don't think she got the praise that she probably should have gotten. My only real complaint, and I think it was mentioned, was there was no build to this. That's probably one of their biggest problems, is they don't know how to build a women's division compelling. It's just like, oh yeah, by the way, she's defending against Shida. Like, okay. That would be my only complaint. There's really no build. There's no, I know they did a little interaction with the Outcast a while back, but like, there's no real heat, no real build. If anything, Tony probably had more heat with Britt Baker than she did Shida. Like, I'm happy for Shida, but the jury's out to whether or not they can work this.
Yeah, I agree. I do think, though, that it very much was smart to kind of turn the division on its head, given that the narrative the last week on the internet and in the media and like that would be my only like caveat, like, because I totally agree that it kind of came out of left field. Not kind of, it came out of left field, right? Like it was not exactly like forcefully built, but we saw that sign last week. But and it was like you only have 1 week between the sign and this, and it was something, right? We got a main event and we got the division turned on its head. Now we have a new champion. Now we start from here. And so that's why I think that's why I think it is at least a half step in the right direction, where it's like, okay, we hear you. Right? Like,
but that's been their problem, though, with any of the, whether it's the TBS or the AEW, when, they were doing, Statlander or whatever. She's defending against random people. Like, that's the problem. There's no build, because they're not just a one-on-one match. They're a title match. So the person should have done something to, quote unquote, earn it. Even if it was an open challenge. If it was, quote unquote, an open challenge, show it as such. It's just going, okay, here's Statlander defending against this person from catering. Like, they're random. And that's the problem. There needs to be a reason. I have no problem with Storm versus Shida. Yeah. Give me a reason.
Tell me why.
A reason. Yes.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
No, that makes yes, I totally agree too. The one thing I will say is I feel like when AEW is at its finest, it's not that they're booking for the fans, but they're most in tune with the AEW fan base when it's rolling, when it's good, when the Acclaimed would be an example I would give. And I'm not trying to make a full conversation because we got to get into Throwback.
Yeah.
But like the Acclaimed would be the example I would give. The MJF stuff we mentioned earlier, those organic type things. And I think they need to find that magic in the women's division.
They seem to have a problem, and I don't mean to cut you off, Clark.
Go
the only thing is, the problem I think they have is they book as if it's an indie show on the weekend and don't necessarily all the time focus on the storytelling aspect. For me, I want the story. I want to know why this person's doing this. I get you doing spontaneous matches. That's fine. But for long-term success, you need to tell compelling stories to make me want to come back and see that, or pay for a pay-per-view to see this match. Just doing it for the sake of doing it, like an indie show on the weekend of going, hey, this guy's fighting this guy. Okay, it's a one-off. That's not long-term success, in my opinion.
I hear
that's what I said yesterday too.
Yeah, it makes
on the podcast. I agree with that point. I feel like that's the one thing that TK needs to improve on, and that's past the women's division too. It goes within, it bleeds into your weekly programming. And the reason I like segments of yesterday, the ones that we talked about, because those are the segments that we've seen progression into a storyline. Now, if we talked about the totality of the show, there was a lot of like random matches that had nothing to really do besides them being a one-off. And I won't say it's going to be a demise, because I think they're doing great, but you're not going to elevate. If you're truly trying to get to the big dog with WWE, you gotta clean stuff out like that.
It's definitely something to be worked on. I agree. Like it's one of those things that you got to get better at over time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you're to guarantee long-term success, at least, I would totally agree with that. Right.
Yep.
But with that, let's move on to Throwback. It's Throwback Thursday. We got a crazy one. Wild match. I was young. It was awesome, though. I remember it. I had it on VHS as a kid. One of the, not last, but outside of the Tombstone pile driver, we didn't see many pile drivers in the WWE for a long time after this one. Mm-hmm. This was one of the final big pile drivers. And then we saw arguably the worst roll-up ever. In hindsight, it's terrible. We lost Owen Hart. Rest in peace. We talked about him weeks ago. It changed Stone Cold Steve Austin's career, but it also changed his style. It made him more of a brawler. He adapted. It's something that we sometimes forget looking back at Stone Cold, that he adjusted his in-ring style right at the top of his ascent all the way to the top. It is a pivotal moment in the Stone Cold Steve Austin story. And Owen Hart was the class act, by the way. Before we get fully into it, I want to mention that about it. And an absolutely professional in the ring, and it could have happened to anybody. This is not an indictment on Owen Hart for that. But in a weird way, it is the turning point in making Stone Cold all the way Stone Cold. because you don't get all those right hands if he's not adjusting because of the neck injury. So I'm going to toss it to Anthony first, and then you, Shad. Your memories from the match. How'd you feel about it? Do you agree with what I was kind of saying there?
Yeah, this is one of those matches that happened just prior to me becoming a fan. So I saw it after, and it's very uncomfortable to watch. And it must have been worse watching it live because you knew that he was all right, but at the time you didn't. When Austin gets pile driven and he can't feel his extremities, that's a scary thing. And you're right, Clark. It is one of those moments that was a pivotal moment because, again, this is prior to Austin's eventual match that really kind of made his career with Brett at WrestleMania 13 with the blood. Because this is prior. No, wait. This is 97. So this was after Brett left. Or was it 96?
97.
97. All right. So it is the same year. All right. So it's the same year. But my point being, one of the things that I looked up, and I didn't know this. I don't know if you guys know this. One of the things that came up online when I was looking at this is that the same thing happened 5 years prior to this. Austin in New Japan delivered the same pile driver to Masahiro Chono and broke his neck, which I didn't know. So I think the only heat that Owen ever really got from this, and Austin has talked about it, I think Brett has talked about it, Owen never apparently reached out and apologized to Steve about it happening. Now, I don't know if that was because Owen didn't know what to say. I don't know what you say to somebody if you break their neck. I mean, there's not enough sorries to justify it, but Owen was relatively a safe worker and one of the all-time greats. The only thing that I would say is, as far as the finish, that was a bad call. I understand Austin was supposed to go over, but that was a mistake. An audible should have been made to either Owen pin Austin or have the ref stop it with the X and say, no, Austin's injured. Because when you look at the track record after it, Austin wins the title at the show with the world's worst roll-up. Then, he relinquishes the title, vacates it a month later. Owen wins it a month after that. Austin comes back, wins it back from Owen, only to lose it a month later to The Rock. I don't understand where the logic was with any of that. I would have just kept the thing on Owen. I would have called an audible, personally.
I hear where you're coming from. I think in that moment, Steve, right, he leans down. We've seen a lot of the footage over the years, and he leans down and asks him, and Steve says, roll up. And that wasn't the original call, but Owen went with, what are you supposed to say there?
Oh, no, I don't blame Owen for doing it, but people behind the scenes know Austin's not fit for this.
I don't know if in 1997, if that referee's prepared to go like, oh, his neck's broken. Like, especially if the guy's sitting there telling you he's okay. In 1997, if the athlete's telling you he's all right, it's pat you on the butt and go back in the game.
Now,
and that's neither right nor wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just saying, like, in hindsight, it's one of those things where I don't know necessarily that the audible was even in the cards.
Well, I do know from Most Wanted Treasures, one of the things that Austin insisted on, he still has that title. Yeah. He insisted that no one, you get a replacement. I keep this one. And to this day, he still has it.
Oh, yeah. 100%. And I love that. Shad, your memories and thoughts on this one. I know you and I are a bit younger, but we talked about it. You've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I've historically seen this before. I don't think I saw it live, but I've been aware of it. I have an older brother who's 10 years older than me, who I think probably was watching the pay-per-view. I was 5 years old, so. But I mean, just in obviously rewatching it going into this, I mean, kind of want to touch base of a little bit on what you were just mentioning earlier. Like, it's just crazy how you see the awareness of stuff now compared to how it was back then. Like, it was definitely a lot different of a time, more of the machismo, like, I'm good. Like, you don't really, the same thing in sports, man. You get like a concussion or something like that, you just want to, ice it up or run back, or if you hurt yourself, you ice it up, or you just run back in the game and kind of go with it without even having a second thought. But I like what you mentioned earlier. I like the fact that we did, see Austin obviously be able to heal up, and stuff like this happens in all, still to this day in wrestling. I mean, we saw Big E hurt his neck last year, stuff like this where botches occur. But it's interesting to kind of just see how you do see how Austin's style becomes more of that brawler type, and how he was able to adjust. And in a vacuum, you get a lot of great moments within that variation style of Austin. But it does make me a little sad because I feel like we were robbed, in a sense, to a lot of great, longer years of Austin just because of his health not being able to keep up and him having issues with his neck and kind of having to call it quits a little bit earlier than he may had to. And to me, Austin, I mean, he's one of my favorites of all time. I always say Triple H is my favorite wrestler of all time. Austin is a hair of a second favorite. And it makes me a little sad because there's a lot of great matches like I would have loved to seen happen towards the later parts of the 2000s, with a CM Punk or something like that we obviously didn't get to see. But this is life, man. This is how it happens. Rest in peace to Owen Hart. I don't think anything in this world is intentional. This is the kind of what you sign up for in a combat sport when you put your body on the line. Nothing is ill will. I know Austin had a little, he was upset about it for a while, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Like he kind of carried that to him for a while. But I mean, it's just the nature of what pro wrestling is.
Absolutely.
I think he was upset that Owen didn't reach out. That was always that was always the thing. He understood the box.
Did he not? I don't know if this is accurate or not, but he didn't attend Owen's funeral, right?
That I don't know.
Owen only lived a few more months after the event.
2 years.
A couple years after that. I think he died in 99. Yeah.
This was in 97.
Yeah, so 24 months is not long. In the grand scheme of things, that's what I mean. Like, not literally. I didn't mean a few, like literally.
Yeah, I know.
3.
Yeah, well,
that's how I meant. Like, it's not like he had a whole lot of time to maybe even gain perspective on the situation. And I would imagine also, given what we know about Stone Cold now and the way that he's kind of, we always talk about Shawn Michaels and the way he transformed his life and whatnot. Stone Cold did the same. Stone Cold had some real struggles, especially with the stuff with Deborah and everything, right? And like, I'm not trying to throw Steve Austin has
no one's perfect.
There was only a 2-year window for Stone Cold to have been reached out to, and at that time in his career, being as competitive as he was, I can imagine that he used that as fuel as much as anything, and I'd prefer to view it that way than him being truly, he viewed it as, I got set back on this and I'm gonna go still get it and use it as fuel. Right?
Austin wasn't mad enough not to work with them, because obviously he did take the title. That's what I'm saying. So it wasn't a situation where I'm never going to work with this guy again. That's what I mean.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, Stone Cold became a brawler after that and put on classics anyway. And Stone Cold has more than cemented his place in wrestling history, as did Owen. Mm-hmm. So as tragic as it is to look back on it, it doesn't necessarily have to be the worst thing. Some good came of it, some bad after the fact, unrelated to it, right? But we don't get the brawling. Austin isn't Thez pressing and punching,
Wasn't he doing it to Brett, though, prior to that at Mania?
He was Thez pressing, but it wasn't about just the right. The Austin right hand came after the Owen incident, right? After the broken neck. When the big right hand, the big Texan slinging him, that became a much bigger part of his. He was way more technical. I mean, remember the gimmick before was the ringmaster.
Yeah.
Right. Like I mean,
Yeah.
he was a way more rest hold technical. He was outstanding still, but the brawler Austin, we got
The
three
mud hole
stages of-
stomping.
yes,
Yeah.
the mud hole stomping, the 3 stages of hell against Triple H, the slugfests that we saw there, we may never have seen if not for this tragic incident. But with that brings us to the end of the show, guys. It's been an awesome Throwback Thursday. On behalf of, Wrestling Republic first. If you guys already haven't liked and subscribed, please do. Thumbs up, 5 stars on Spotify, comments, all of that helps. We appreciate the support. On behalf of me, Anthony, and Shad, thank you for watching. We'll be back once again tomorrow at noon my time, so Pacific, and then 8 p.m. over in the UK. Yeah, 8 in the UK.
Okay.
And then 3 Eastern.
And Hawaii, right? What's in Hawaii?
And 9 Hawaiian. And then with that, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
All right.